Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Be Unstoppable podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, Darcus Beese. Just before we get into conversation with Darcus, for those that don't know, the Be Unstoppable podcast is a new podcast series that I'm launching on October the 7th. So you'll be able to hear this. If you hear gems today and you want to hear it back, if you want to watch it back, you'll be able to do so on October the 7th. We'll be releasing episodes every week after that. The Be Unstoppable podcast is about a community of like-minded individuals that aspire to succeed, okay? What we do is we provide you with information and access to top-level executives, musicians, sports people from the world of music, media, tech, sport, finance, where we bring you behind the scenes of what it's really like, but also let you into the lives of these inspirational figures who make things happen. And today we're super fortunate to have someone that has been around through my whole journey. I think I must have met you about 2002. I came for an interview with you and got turned down, but it's all good. I don't hold it against you, Darcus. It's all good.
You've gone on to great things.
That was your mistake.
Exactly.
And
one of many.
And yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So we will start to get into this. So again, welcome to the first episode of the Be Unstoppable podcast. Today's guest is a true titan of the music industry with a career spanning over 30 years at the very top of his game. Darcus Beese is the man behind some of the most iconic names in the music industry, from Amy Winehouse, Florence and the Machine, Sugababes, the list goes on. But his story is so much more than just signing superstars. It's about breaking down barriers, making history, and staying ahead of the curve in one of the toughest industries on the planet. Darcus didn't just climb the ranks, he shattered the ceilings. As the first Black CEO of a major frontline label, he redefined what leadership looks like in the music business. And that journey is deeply personal. Raised as the son of political activists, Darcus grew up with an unshakable belief in justice and perseverance, values that have carried him through his remarkable career. But it doesn't stop there. Recently diagnosed with ADHD, Darcus has embraced this discovery as a new lens on his life, adding yet another layer to an already incredible journey. Now with his latest venture, Darco Artist Partnerships, he's taken the leap into the independent music sector at a pivotal time for the music industry. And to top it all off, he's just released his new book, which I hope you've all read, Rebel with a Cause, where he takes us behind the scenes of his life, career, and his vision for the future. So in this conversation, we'll unpack the highs, the lows, and the mindset that has kept Darcus unstoppable for 3 decades. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a story of Darcus Beese. This is the Be Unstoppable podcast. Darcus, welcome.
Fucking hell. Thank you very much for that introduction. I don't know who you were talking about there, but he sounds like a great guy who's done some great things. No, thank you.
It's all good. It's
Pleasure
all good.
to be here.
We're going to dive right in and let's go straight to the beginning. What was life like for a young Darcus Beese growing up in West London? Can you speak about your family, your upbringing, and how those early experiences shaped you?
Yeah. Who's West London here? All right, one person.
No West London in the house.
West London.
Where's
London.
North? North? Yeah, baby. South?
So I was South Wheezy. I don't even think South Wheezy exists, but I was Southwest 6, Fulham. I grew up in an enclave called Sands End, just off the Wansford Bridge Road. And I grew up in the 70s and in the 80s. I was a teenager in the 80s, but running around in the 70s and 80s was a movie. Everything was very racially charged and politically charged. My mother and father were in the Black Panthers, so race was kind of central to my upbringing very early. I kind of knew about racism when I was too young to know about racism. So, and I grew up in a very, even though the street had immigrants on the street. It was Fulham was very white, working class. And Chelsea football ground was down the road. This is the 70s, by the way. And we had a National Front office down the road from Chelsea football ground. So Saturdays, you wouldn't go up. When Chelsea were playing at home, you wouldn't go up to Fulham Broadway.
There's a story in your book about you sticking the middle finger up to some
some Chelsea skinheads. And so, you know, growing up, going to school, being at school, coming home, being out, playing out, hanging out, it was and you grow up normalizing shit, but you're always on your toes. You're always in fight or flight mode. You hate authority, which was the police, but with my ADHD, which I didn't know at the time, I just hated everybody, all authority. So, and then not being diagnosed and being in school, I was labelled, I had this label. So all the way through school, you know, you end up kind of coming to the end, you know, your fifth form, and basically your school reports just criminalise you before you even leave school. Because you're painted as this person that hates authority, can't sit still, is disruptive, blah, 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 blah. So you're just trying to grow up, just trying to navigate those things, and you normalize a lot of stuff, and everything's in your face. It's like wogs out, blacks go home, everything's in your face, and you get that, you know, when you're, you know, so... You know, when you go out and you go, is West London in the house? When you're at the club and the DJ goes, is West London in the house? South London in the house? North London in the house? In any of those raves we used to go to, you were taking your life into your hands. So when people go, you West London, I'd be like, I ain't from France. So you was on your toes in that situation. And then when you were going home, you were on your toes because the police or white people were coming for you. So it was a really... Again, writing the book has enabled me to kind of take this all back, that we normalized this shit. We're coming up through trauma and none of it's recognized. So there for the grace of God go I, in terms of, you know, the room full of me and my mates. You know, if there's a picture of me and my mates, you go, which one of those mates is around still? What are they doing now? And you know, a couple of my mates would have faded out because they died. A couple of mates would have gone to prison, and me and my mate KG were the only ones that kind of. He's a producer, by the way, who did the All Saints record.
Yeah, KG's great.
But we were the kind of only two that kind of made it out. So growing up in Fulham was a bit of a movie, and it was, you know, like the Warriors. You seen the Warriors? It was always like you were always trying to make it home alive. When we were growing up, you know, Stephen Lawrence was my age. Thank God I didn't live over those sides. But yeah, so that was the movie growing up.
And that was made even more apparent by the fact that your parents were activists, famously part of the Mangrove Nine. And your father represented himself during the trial and won the case. That's a huge legacy. You share the same name as him as well.
I know.
So that's a huge legacy to carry. How did being raised in such a politically charged household environment affect or influence your sense of identity as a young man? And how has that helped to shape your worldview today?
You definitely kind of grow up knowing that you have to stand on a hill for something. You have to stand for something. I was taught you have to stand for something. Even if you're going to take a beating, you've got to stand for something. So, and I grew up having to go on demonstrations and all that malarkey. I wasn't like, Mum, can you take me on a demonstration? It was like, you're coming on a demonstration. So as much as it wasn't enjoyable, it did give me a sense of justice early on. Whether it was for myself or for other people, and getting into tear-ups because of that. You know, my dad, Darcus Howe, was a black, and my mum were two Black Panthers that that I wish that sometimes they just took me to the park. But if you're growing up in a struggle, that's what it was. and then that just throws forward to how you want to be perceived, how you want other people to be perceived. Do you have an empathy out of the fire that you come out of? Yeah, it just kind of gives you a bit of DNA and a bit more than just an opinion, a bit of lived experience that I was able to kind of take forward and run a business or work with people. That was a mixed room from a person that had obstacles, and not that I wanted to create shortcuts for people, but I didn't want to create obstacles for people. Or if there were obstacles, I wanted to give them the ability to get over those obstacles. So and have what I never had, which was not to make it easy, but someone to look like I looked like. I didn't have that. So yeah, that stuff of being forged in the fire of an upbringing that was race and justice was at the center. That's how I was. How I would have been trying to sign an act or running a business. So yeah.
You speak of having to fight for your blackness, and there's actually a bit in your book that really stood out to me regarding how you perceive your identity and how you perceive your identity as a black man, and how that's impacted your journey through into the business. And I kind of wanted to read the extract because I thought it was quite powerful, and then I'd like you to speak to it if that's okay. So in the book, let me take off my glasses. It says, one afternoon, after standing on that hill yet again, being called nigger for the umpteenth time that week, and getting into a brawl with a gang of Irish kids who lived across the road, I ran indoors crying my eyes out. At this point, Dad had moved out or been kicked out, but nevertheless, he'd often be around. What are you crying about? He said, looking me up and down. Some Irish kid from over the road beat me up, I said, tears streaming down my grubby face. Dad kissed his teeth, grabbed the cricket bat, and put it in my hand. What are you doing? Mum shouted. Go and deal with him, Dad snapped back before Mum grabbed the bat out of my hand. Dad kissed his teeth again. Boy, don't let these white people fuck with you, he said, before going back to whatever it was he was doing. I knew he'd never let me go out onto the street and smash someone, but he had to illustrate the point to me in no uncertain terms. Don't let white people fuck with you. Can you speak to that and how that message resonated through your career?
Yeah, I mean, listen, my wife is white. My mum's mum was white. My friends, I had a lot of white friends, but you got to understand, this was the 70s we were growing up in, and everything was deeply racism was deeply entrenched in everything, and so when I use white in the book, I speak to a system. I don't speak to specific people. I speak to a system that the room looks like the way it is, and there's two forms of protest. There's going out on the street, and there's being angry, and there's even rioting, right? There's throwing bricks, there's however angry you are, but there's protest. And I early on, because of the hill that I stood on, when people go, you got a chip on your shoulder, I had a fucking bag of them. So I didn't have an issue with people go, you got a chip on your shoulder. Yes, I do. Because every time I get up in the morning, it's fucking reminded that I'm not just a human being. So there has to be a point when you have to protest in a different way. And I realized after certain instances, like walking myself out of Ireland because I didn't like the way they were dealing with me the first time, or you would just get ready to pick up a chair to dash because you're being your authentic self, is at some point you have to learn how not to be your authentic self, and you have to learn how to navigate this, because you're going to have to navigate if you're going to be successful. And then what is your form of protest? And in the end, I figured out that my form of protest was to be successful as a black man, and change stuff because of my trajectory. And if I become the one of one, right, then that's then the decades that I would have had to navigate and mask was a lot. So I figured out from those moments with dad and mum that protests can happen in many different ways. I just did it in a very capitalist way, but you know what I'm saying? It was
I think it speaks to, you know, what you just said about learning how not to throw the chair, for example, and there's a good example in your book. And I've heard you mention before the importance of code switching, and I think that's kind of what you're leaning into right now. And that incident where you picked up the chair to throw at your boss, your line manager, and caught yourself because you saw how everybody was looking at you.
Yeah.
That appeared to be the pivotal moment that you kind of realized, okay, there's a different way to do this. In that moment, with all your co-workers surrounding you, you being likely the only black person in the label at the time, and their expressions telling such a story, what was going through your mind? How did that lead you into, okay, I need to understand how to code switch and how to carry myself differently?
Before I went into music, I was a hairdresser. I trained to be I was sweeping hair in a salon, and it was a salon up in Kensington Church Street, so it was very white and very posh, middle to upper class. You know, it was around the Diana times that everyone had big, flicky, big hairdos, and I remember the boss. A client came in, and I went to greet the client, and the boss said, "Come away from the client." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Because you have no idea what service is, what etiquette is." And I wasn't allowed to answer the phone, and I wasn't allowed to greet clients. All I was allowed to do was make tea and sweep hair. And the mission came. All I wanted to do was greet clients, and because they said I couldn't. But there's this in salons, in the high class salons, there's a certain service that you have to give clients and a certain etiquette. And I learned, being in the service industry, how to speak to people, and how to have a telephone manner. But that was 16, 17. When I got into the music industry, I was still rough around the edges. But I was able to kind of be in a room with different people and not speak the way I'd speak in an hour's time when I got home. So, the ability to that job in hairdressing. When you talk about pivotal moments, you know, when I went into hairdressing, everybody thought I was gay, because to be a black guy in hairdressing was just like, well, you're gay, and I was like, I'm not gay, but I just had to turn left when all my mates were turning right, and I had to create a landscape that was different, and I had to widen my horizons. It was the chair incident, hairdressing, and I wasn't allowed to sign something, and I'd only been in the job 6 or 7 months, and I wasn't allowed to sign something. I thought, well, I've got this A&R title, I should be allowed to sign. So I'd been doing the job 6 months, and I threw my toys out the pram, and the boss heard me throwing my toys out the pram, and he came downstairs. Don't ever do this, kids. And he came downstairs and he said, "What's all the racket going on about?" I said, "Well, Julian Palmer, he won't let me sign this act, and if he doesn't let me sign it, I'll leave." And my boss opened the door. The MD opened the door. He said, "Well, then leave."
Wow.
And I looked at him and I went, "Yeah, I'm going to leave." And I walked out. And I remember getting outside going, "I've just left Island Records." And I thought, after that moment, I was never, ever, ever going to get fired again, ever. I'm just going to keep my head under the parapet, not raise it to get it shot off. And I was just going to go about my business, learn and learn.
You walked out after having sent hundreds of
Yeah.
CVs in to try and get a job and not being able to get one, and by a stroke of luck, you were able to get into Ireland, and then you walked out.
And then I walked out. Someone goes, yeah, but you stand for something. Yeah, but not if I don't get let back in and have to go back to hairdressing.
So what did you do after you walked out?
I went to work at Big Life Records with Jazz Summers, who taught me how to make records, who taught me about the song process. You know, we would go to gigs, and like the artist would turn their back, and he'd go, "Never turn your back." See that? Never turn your back on the audience. Never. And it's just those little things of, you know, when we talk about songs, it was like, you know, the first line of the first verse is just weak. So you drill down about going back to stuff and going, it's not good enough, work it. In a world now where with songs that people are cutting down the intro of songs and not having a mid-late because it's too long for streaming, and I'm like, you you know, so it's I was taught by the great. I was taught by the greats. I was mentored by the greats, and then after Jazz Summers and Tim Parry taught me the art of A&R. A few years later, I managed to get back to Ireland. So, yeah.
And how did that happen? How did you end up, fortunately, back in your home, effectively?
Because I remember just sitting at my desk one day, and I was working at Gut Records. I'd left
Big Life,
and I was working for Guy Holmes, but I was making Right Said Fred records. Who remembers Right Said Fred?
I'm too sexy, is Right Said Fred.
So I was just like, I don't want to be here making Right Said Fred records. And then the phone rang, and this is no lie. The phone rang, and Julian Palmer called, who used to run Fourth and Broadway Records, which was the dance and black music subsidiary of Island Records. And he said, "Do you want to come back to Ireland?" And before he even put the phone down, I was at Island Records with my two long empty hands. In '94, that was.
Saying I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that was in '94. So I got back to Ireland, and I never left there. Well, I obviously did because I'm here, but
Darcus, you started as T-Boy in Ireland, in the promotions department. You walked out, you came back, you paid your dues effectively. With the current social media climate, creating this culture where everybody is somebody online, do you think that the current generation are still keen to pay their dues in the way that you did? And what do you think about the importance of paying your dues?
Do you want me to tell you the truth?
Of course, that's why we're here. Everyone wants the nuggets. We don't want the industry lines. We want the truth.
I think that everybody wants it to be about them, and everybody's Instagram famous, and everybody's working, and everybody's a CEO of their Instagram page, without delivering anything. I came back from America. I went to work in America for years, and you'll probably cover it.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But in the time that I was there, and it was all TikTok, it was all going on. Everyone was doing these TikTok deals, and I just couldn't do it. And I decided that we were going to go a different way, and we signed Sabrina Carpenter, we signed Remy Wolf, we signed this kid called Keshi, and we signed Baby Rose. And that was a roster of see you in 5 years' time, right? And the mission is to get into relationships with artists, to make records, to sell around the world. It's not just to make records. It's not just to turn up. It's not just to be okay. It's not just to be, it's a vibe. I didn't go to work and understand that the accountability and responsibility to the business is to sell a shitload of records with whoever, and to give people the ability in whatever lane they are to have a career. Now, I know that technology evolves and changes the delivery system, but as we were talking about earlier, it shouldn't change the strength of the art or the ambition of your music to be able to travel beyond the fucking M25, and to have a global footprint, and to raise the bar as high as any of these emerging markets, Korea, Africa, and make records that can compete. And in the last 5 years, I don't know what our soft power is to the rest of the world. I don't know what artists. It'd be interesting to kind of go around each of these labels at the moment and look at their rosters and go, no, which of these artists are career artists? Which of these artists are you really betting on? Because you can't bet on all of them. And then what does accountability look like at the end of the day? So when I went to America and I came back, I signed acts to go around the world. So the headspace of that ambition, and not everything can do it, and not everything has to go around the world, because there's art and then there's the business, and people either decide that whether they're in the art or they're in the business, right? And they're two different things.
What's the difference?
The difference is that hit music is driven by big hit records. Culture's just driven by art and amazing songs. Now, if those amazing songs cross over pop, it doesn't make it pop. The art has just crossed over. And then there are artists that are straight pop acts that are live or die by the A&R process of getting them in the room to write a song that can go off around the world. And if people don't think that that's their responsibility, then do it as a hobby. But if you want to be in a business and have a career, then in the world, in this world of noise, right? And it is noise. Quality does cut through. I don't care what anybody says. It does get found. It might take a little longer to get found, but you know, I very rarely get taken out to live shows because no one's really playing live.
Focused on live anymore.
No one's focused on live because people can find their community online. So they think that live is not really a key.
But do you not think that, so we've had this conversation.
Am I moaning? Do I sound like I'm fucking kicking off here? Like, sorry, I was going to be a bit heavy.
We've jumped a few questions, but it's okay. It's all right. It's all good.
It's the ADHD.
I'm going to bring you back, and we're going to get into the ADHD too.
Sorry.
But do you not think that, because we have this conversation quite a lot.
You can see I'm very passionate about this shit, right? Sorry.
And part of the conversation is, you know, a lot of talent, a lot of artists are told, you know, go online, find your community online, be online. You don't need executives. You don't need a manager. You can do it all. You can upload to social media. One of the things that I'm always advocating for is the fact that actually, yes, it is good that you can go online, you can find all these communities, but actually nothing beats some of the traditional, if you want to call it, analog methods, which is, you know, performing in front of an audience, being here on a stage in front of people, you know, pressing flesh, engaging, conversing, meeting people, you know, even back to the old street team kind of stuff where I started. These are all important parts of the journey.
Yeah.
Now, the industry's kind of gone the other way and gone, well, actually, no, we can just do it all digital and online. And you're seeing the results of that with a lot of people leaving labels, which we'll get to as well. But how do you make the two coexist together? How do you make the live side, the personal engagement, and the social media, the online side of it? How do you work the two of those for the benefit of a great artist, or to make a project really accelerate?
I don't know. And the reason why I say I don't know, because there used to be 2 or 3 years that a band or an artist they were just allowed to just get on with it and weren't pressured or pushed or got found by an algorithm that flipped them up in front of people, that then they got drawn out of just enjoying it. And all of a sudden the data's going, doing this, and there's A&R people knocking at the door going, I can give you this, and they're like, fucking what the fuck happened? Back in the day, it's not back in the day, because some things should not change. Community building was always community building. You just used to do it from putting out music and going out live. Yeah. Live Live was the measure of whether someone could cut it live. Used to turn up and people used to have a good song, and you go, but the fuck, I can't sing. So it used to stop there.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't, in black music, you didn't sign people that couldn't sing. But because of the technology, there's people rocking around that just got a vibe.
Yeah.
And it's not good enough. And there's people that talk to me and they play me stuff and I go, do you really think this is great? Because if you measure it, I'm serious, because if you go, you've got to be able to kind of look back and draw comparisons, like Lauryn Hill's album, or Mary J. Blige 411, or SWV, or Beyonce, or who? Oh, was it? Oh, sorry, that's Agreement. Is that Agreement? Sorry. So whenever we made records, there were always comparables, and the bar was high. So and records weren't about splice. It wasn't about a two-track, a vocal and a backing track. People made records and people made art. So, and to do that, you have to be mentored. You have to be inspired. You have to be, you don't learn jujitsu without no fucking sensei, like, So if it's a craft, you usually have someone to inspire you, someone to talk to you, or go, yo, that's amazing, or yo, that's not amazing. But equally, the reason why I understood quality in Amy's voice when Amy came along, because I knew what Mahalia Jackson's voice sounded like. I knew what Billie Holiday's voice was like. I knew what Sarah Vaughan's voice sounded like. I knew what Dionne Warwick's, blah, blah, blah. So, you talk to some people and it's like, who's your favorite singer from all time? Whitney Houston. I'm like, dude, can we just go back a bit further?
Yeah.
So, and that the understanding of jazz, blues, disco, funk, and understand that as much as it's a business, you've got to make something spectacular. And that's all. Not everyone can do it. I just want to get back to a point where you can hear that people give a fuck about it, and that people have spent time finding out who they are. Because you live in this world where you go, well, they got there that quick. I don't know what getting there that quick is. The quicker you get there is the quicker that you'll finish. The slower that you get there is the longer tail you have. So, and I've been around 30 years to know, I don't care if you can point to me and go, well, what about that? I'm talking about in the main.
Yeah. Touching on that, you signed Amy Winehouse, Sugababes, Taio Cruz, Florence the Machine, Gigs, so many more. In A&R, what is it about those artists that stood out? And what was your process in helping to develop those careers? Because if we're going to have that conversation, we should go back into you as an A&R. Mm-hmm.
I think some artists you learn how to get out of the way of. And some artists you have to understand what value you can give to it. And sometimes getting out of the way is valuable. Even with Amy, when she delivered Frank, you were kind of having a conversation from not a single point of view, but you're having a conversation with a real force of personality, saying, this album's amazing. It's just there's maybe no lead out record. Don't kill me. And she went away and wrote Stronger Than Me. Her and Salam went back and delivered Stronger Than Me. Sugababes was just hands-on writing, putting the writers together, the producers. That's hands-on. Taio had a song called Break Your Heart that he wanted to give to Cheryl Cole. I was like, you're fucking crazy. But what would I be singing about Break Your Heart? And I'm like, dude, it's a hit. And we'd done an album with Taio before and just nearly got there. And then he did Break Your Heart, and that was huge. Went around the world.
Wasn't that one of the most...
It was the quickest record to number one, breaking George Michael's record in America. And then that gave him the ability to get to bigger producers to get Dynamite. But again, that was the mission. It was no, it's a vibe. It's no, this has done 10 million streams. I don't even know what streams means nowadays. I just know what success smells like.
Yeah. Do that again. What does success smell like?
I know what it tastes like. And some people, I've lived off good food, and a lot of people are trying to live off microwave food at the moment. And all you're going to end up doing is getting anemic, weak, and this is where we've ended up, where everybody got fooled by COVID because everybody was in situ and thought that was it. And we've kind of come out the other end, and I need people to take some vitamins. I need some like good cooked food and some care. You taste the food and then you put it back in. You know what I mean? Or you taste it and go too salty, fuck it, start again.
Speaking of well cooked food, Amy.
But just going back, because again, there's no artist that's walking around in the main not being successful, and they should have been.
Yeah.
Right?
You think?
There's because you can talk like Ray. Polydor didn't stop Ray from being successful. She's successful. They made themselves look stupid, right? But no one was going to stop Ray being successful. They might have locked her down for too long, but she went out and was successful. So you're not going to stop someone. And even in independent, because everyone's sitting there going, how are you going to do this by yourself? Watch me. The story was good. The voice is amazing. The story, the music, and everything at the right time was perfect. So, is that an anomaly? No. Can it happen again? Yes. Do the majors want it to happen again? No. Florence, whoever she would assign to, would have been Florence and the Machine. Chris Martin, whoever he would assign to, would have been Chris Martin. Adele, the only interesting thing is like with Amy and Adele is Adele was only Adele because she signed to XL. And the perception of Adele then wasn't the perception of Adele now.
Why did it only work with her signing to XL?
Because you don't expect someone to blast it out the park. You expect culture and you expect time to be taken, and it's not about the hit. So Amy's jazz record and Adele's first album set them up.
Do you want to explain kind of how you set up Amy's first album? Because as you mentioned, you didn't have the out the block single, so you had to utilize a different strategy rather than, okay, we're going to put out this single and this video and another single, another video. Do you want to kind of talk to the strategy that you used to kind of get the audience behind Amy on the Frank album?
Yeah, we just backed a jazz record. We backed a jazz artist, and we backed a jazz artist in a mainstream way. She was young. She was from Camden. Her shoe game was off the scale. She was very polarizing, and her lyrics were amazing. And even the economics would never put the deal under pressure, or a development under pressure. What put her under pressure was what people perceived of what success looked like. So even though the chart position wasn't high, I was going to gigs, to packed out sweaty gigs of people losing their shit. So the generic version of success back then that was marked by a chart position, I knew the way that she was getting reviewed and the gigs that she was doing was something was happening. Didn't know what it was and how big it could be, but we backed Amy as a jazz artist. We didn't try and make her something she wasn't. And I think being allowed to make that first that first album, and don't forget, she was already signed to EMI Publishing. Yeah. Guy Moot had already signed her to publishing. She was already with Salam Remy. Do
you want to speak to the story of how you kind of found her?
Well, I take the plaudits, right, because I work in records. But Amy was signed to EMI Publishing easily a year and a half before I came along. And she was working with Salam. She was working with Commissioner Gordon that had just come off the Lauryn Hill album.
So, and Salam Remy did a lot of the Nas records.
Yeah. And like I said, Guy had signed her and developed her. So when I pitched up, she had a handful of the songs that made the first record. And she had been allowed a year or two to just develop in publishing. And that's the great thing about publishing. and that I figured this out, that you can develop stuff in publishing without putting a clock of records on them. So, and that's kind of in terms of how I think about publishing now, past the songwriter. And
for those that don't understand the difference between records and publishing, could you just quickly just give a super quick summary?
The publishers own the mechanics to the songwriting, and I don't own, but the record company owns the recording, right? Go on Google and do some homework. It's a good bit of homework, difference between records and publishing. But yeah, so what, and in Florence, Disclosure and Sam Smith, Disclosure had already put out records via Moshi Moshi. They were already disclosed by the time we signed them.
Yeah.
So, and the point I make, Robin, who we signed, was already Robin. She'd already got Every Heartbeat out in the marketplace. So the point I'm making is that a lot of developments happened before we were doing deals. And because of fucking TikTok, everybody's getting thrown up as data and going, oh shit, record deal. And it's not the way. It's to arrive at the scene of an accident. It's to be in the ambulance and to arrive at the scene of an accident is what's going on. So that those couple of years of development, of getting it right, getting it wrong, not being pressured about people's opinion, and feeding live into the storytelling and being able to sell a ticket rather than a like or a stream. And that's work. And I don't know whether people are a bit frightened of that work now that has to be put in to be an artist, to build your community outside doing it from your bedroom. Because that's what career looks like. That's what career looks like, you know. And, you know, even Ed Sheeran, and I don't know if anybody's gone on YouTube and seen what Ed Sheeran was doing before he was famous and how he tried to be famous. He was just doing talent shows.
He did gigs. I remember booking him for a rave that I did.
Yeah, no. But
ago.
Even before that,
he was out there.
Right,
everywhere.
okay. He was out there in all formats until Jamal just kind of put some edges round him, right? And made him feel like he belonged. But up until that point, there was a couple of years of Ed busking and doing his stuff. So you can't. So yeah, just to understand that, what does a career look like to go long? And if you bust too soon, it's not sustainable. You know, if I had got lucky and had my first hit record in my first year and gassed me, I don't think I'd be sitting here now. So yeah, having success too soon is not sustainable. So you try and give people a proper development, and development is getting them to year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7. You know, we ended up with artists under contract 10 years later, because that's what success in being in a deal and creating a career look like.
So how do you do that? How do you get an artist? Because, you know, we hear the stories often, this artist got dropped, that artist got dropped. How do you go about taking an artist and building a career where they can be with you for 10 years, go from album to album, have dips, maybe not always hit the mark that you hoped that they would hit, but you still give them the opportunity to go again?
Good question. I always, when we were negotiating deals were always predicated on stuff not working. It was the record deal was always based on, well, if it doesn't work, you have to pay us this. And they weren't built to keep people in a deal. The deals were kind of would put pressure on the development of an artist. And so I always used to try and understand what ambition looked like. And I used to say to people, look, we can pay the money, but you're just going to put pressure on it. Some people would take the money. Some people would take the money. The brave people wouldn't take the money. The brave people that had confidence themselves would take less money. They say, give me more royalty, right?
And what's the difference between taking the money and taking more of a royalty?
If you take a higher royalty, that means I just have to pay you out a higher royalty. If you take money and I give you a less royalty, you've gambled on taking the money right now.
So if you're successful, you're going to get more on the back end. If you take a higher royalty, the more sales you're going to see.
If anybody comes to me and goes, don't give me the money, give me higher royalty, I'll go, can I give you money? Take the money. Because you were taught, the royalty, don't set precedents by giving people higher royalties. So the bravest manager I had ever come across was Mumford Sons manager. And does everybody know who Mumford Sons are? He came to me and goes, he used to manage Keane, and we had Keane, and Keane had sold us millions of records. And he said, I've got this group called Mumford Sons, and they're going to be huge. And he played it to me, and I went, no, they're not. I don't fucking stand-up bass and banjo. I don't get it. And he said, but the kids, the A&R kids were like proper passionate about it. I believed in their passion. They took me to the shows. It was sold out. I couldn't deny what was going on in the room. But the manager said, just give me 150 grand to make the record and pay the band. That's it. And I was like, is that all? He was like, yeah. Oh, there you are. And then 18 months later, people are like, Darcus, that Mumford Sons, you genius. How did you know? I said, I didn't know. He just made it easy to do the deal. And the kids were really, the A&R kids were really passionate about it. And I tell that story today. So, and then record deals where I overpaid, right? Where the deal was sort and everyone was in and we overpaid to get it. They're not here anymore.
Yeah.
Any deal that I overpaid to get is not here anymore. So what does that tell you? It tells you that I'm really bad at spending money. But some of the business is about winning deals, and by hook or by crook. But once you start paying over the odds, it's never going to work because it's not sustainable.
You spoke about Mumford & Sons and not seeing that was going to work. Has there been other occasions where you've come across acts and you've been like, absolutely not, that's not going to happen? I know you speak to a couple that you missed out on in your
I've never
book.
Missed out on anything. No, I've signed everything that I was going to sign and was successful. No, you're not going to be able to sign everything. And in writing the book, I wanted it to be a bit of a resource for this conversation. I wanted young black men to understand from a young age, you're not savage or an animal, right? We're just wired differently. And I wanted to get some accountability and understand what accountability actually was and what success actually looked like. And I'm just trying to remember what the basis of your question was.
The acts that you missed out on.
Oh yeah, I was trying to get away from that.
There's a great story about Lauryn and Ed.
Lauryn Hill.
And
no, look, there's a Lauryn Hill conversation and there's an Ed Sheeran conversation. Basically, which one do you want to hear first? The Ed Sheeran or the Lauryn Hill? All right, the Lauryn Hills. So before I even went to America, obviously I had a network that went into America, and Lauryn Hill was obviously out of a deal. And it was in the days when she was still turning up late for gigs and stuff. And but she had just got out. She just got off a big tax evasion thing, and she needed some dough. And shit, this has been recorded, isn't it? Oh, it's in the book.
It's in the book. Don't worry. It's
but
in
there
the
was
book.
there was this hoo-ha. But I managed to get in touch with Lauryn Hill's kind of day-to-day at the time, manager day-to-day. And I was really in a conversation about signing Lauryn Hill. All right. And my mind was just blown by this, man, like Lauryn Hill. And I'd heard a couple of okay demos, but it was Lauryn Hill.
Yeah.
And I remember going back to my boss, David Joseph, at the time. I went, so I've got this chance to sign Lauryn Hill. And he looked at me and he went, you're not signing Lauryn Hill. And I went, yeah, but it's Lauryn Hill. And he's like, well, one, it's an American deal. And two, how much is it? And I said the number and he went, hell no. And I was like, oh, but I can't go back to Lauryn Hill and say I can't sign her. I talked to her like I was the president and I can do anything.
You gassed it.
And even though you're a president, there's always someone above you, right? You think you have power, but you don't really. There's always someone above you. And so I called up, I emailed the manager trying to get out of it on an email. And I said, look, they're making it really hard for me to do the deal here. It's out of America, blah, blah, blah. And I got no reply. And then I'm in the kitchen, my missus is doing the washing up, and my phone rings, unknown, and I answer it. And he goes, "Hey, Darcus, it's so-and-so. I've just got Lauryn Hill for you." And she puts Lauryn Hill on the phone. And I'm like, "Oh, shit. Hi, Lauryn. Hi, Miss Hill. Don't worry about me. Hello, Mrs. Hill. The white man says jump and you say how high?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." So it's like, talking to me about the slave plantation mentality. And I was like, "I'm really sorry, Mrs. Hill, but blah, blah, blah." And basically I managed to kind of get out of it. And then the Ed Sheeran one was, we had put on a competition for local universities and local kids to join, and Ed Sheeran won it. He won the competition. And the offer of the competition was a singles deal with Island Records. And the manager said, "Well, we don't want a singles deal, we want an album deal." And I was like, "Well, who the fuck is this kid? He ain't a fucking album deal." And he had A-Team at the time. And my A&R, Annie, who's the A&R girl, was just like, she really wanted to sign him. But we were being really successful with Ben Howard and Mumford and Florence and blah. So I was a bit snobby at the time. So she took me down to the Half Moon pub in Putney to go and see Ed play. And he played these tunes, and I was just like, it just sounds like sixth form music to me. I just don't get it. And then he had done a tune with Devlin, he was featuring on it. And Devlin
was signed to you guys,
yeah,
right?
Devlin was signed to us. And Devlin was playing Coco a couple of weeks later. And I went to the Coco show, and as I walked in, it was going off in the place. And I was like, "What the fuck's going on?" And I'm walking through, and as the parting of the crowd, and I see Ed Sheeran on stage with Devlin, and I'm like, when you kind of have a oh shit moment, you can kind of see him in situ.
Yeah.
He's like, "I don't need you, you don't need me," and he's doing a loop pedal, and Devlin's rapping, and I'm like, fuck. Backstage, cut to backstage. I'm like, "Yo, Ed." "Yo, Ed." And I'm like, "Where you at?" He said, "I'm here in front of you." I said, No, record deal wise." He said, "No, I'm just down the road with Atlantic." And I was like, fuck. And then I was in America a few years back. I was in America, and someone called me and went, "Why is Howard Stern talking about you? Why is Ed Sheeran and Howard Stern talking about you on the show?" And I'm like, "Oh, mate, is he telling the story that I didn't fucking sign him?" He's like, "Yeah, but he's kind of giving you a reprieve because he's kind of saying that you were a bit snobby and Ireland were doing really, really well at the time." But I'm relaxed in what we did as a company, what I did as an individual. You can't sign everything. I love Ed, but I wouldn't go home and listen to Ed. And I just didn't. I'm trying to dig myself out of a hole. Yes, I should have fucking signed Ed. All right, is that what people want to hear? But yeah, you can't sign everything. We were in for the Arctic Monkeys. We were in such an amazing time and place that we were in for a lot of stuff that we didn't get.
But something you did sign was the Sugababes.
Yeah.
And that is just fascinating to me.
That's a book in itself.
You were super pivotal to signing the three young ladies. Roller coaster of lineup changes, loads of internal drama, super well documented. What kept that project alive? What fueled your determination to push forward amidst all the chaos, all the drama, everything that was going on behind the scenes? And from an executive perspective, what was the strategic thinking that drove you to keep that show on the road? And why was it so important for you to see this through?
That band was held together. The reason why that band stayed together for so long was because the records were amazing. Soon as the records stopped being amazing, it started to splinter, and you can't deliver much with ordinary records. The madness of the lineup changed. You can mask it for so long with great records until you swap out the last person, the last original person, and then people go, "You're mugging us off." Right? But the girls' personalities and the records that they were making was the success of that band. To keep that madness going, everybody did their job, to the point where even though the girls were moaning about me, the record company or management, I saw them playing Glastonbury the other day, right? That's because they made such amazing records, not because of them, right? You know, every record that was a hit, they hated. But now, as they've come through the other side and they now wish they should have enjoyed it while they were in it. But I'm glad they get the nostalgic side of the great records that they made, because again, you listen to those records and they stand the test of time. They stand the test of time. So you're not just creating cannon fodder, you're creating catalogue, right? And that's, again, this whole thing comes back down to what today's music is tomorrow's catalogue. And I don't want to be part of the most anemic part of history, right? When we kind of look at, you know, when archaeologists come around and they kind of go, what happened in this time period? You know what I mean? And they kind of go, you know, with sedimentary rock, the layers, you can kind of go, what happened here? Yeah, TikTok. You know, people didn't give a fuck, and you'll be able to see it because the scene will be so fucking thin and anemic that I don't want to. The future of music is what's happening now. Today's music is tomorrow's catalogue, and rap catalogue should live 10 and 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. I don't know in this last 5, 8 years whether we've all been doing that. If we have, then I'm going to fire myself. And if there isn't, it only takes a couple of handful of change makers to be able to point to, okay, what's happening over there? But something when there's not enough inspiration and creativity around at the moment. So that the ability to go long is to keep delivering records that engage and reflect and that can live, and people that have characters that people can engage with, and people need time to find out who they are. You know, there's that brilliant artist Lola Young, and I've seen a lot of iterations of her as she's released music. And that just says to me that you're developing out in the open when some of this should have been 2 or 3 years off the radar. So I just go to all of this conversation, and the book is to say, as technology evolves, the art should still remain amazing. Otherwise, you know, you don't go to the gallery to see ordinary art. You know, you don't go to football to see ordinary footballers. So why put out ordinary music by ordinary people?
But is it ordinary music by ordinary people, or is it just that you, me, and people like us are aging out and the new generation are coming in?
Not at all. Not at all. Because I'm talking about the 1%. I'm not talking about 90% of the business. The 90% of the business is to sell shitloads around the world, volume and everything. I'm talking about individually, as I get up in the morning, and as individuals get up in the morning, why in 20 years are they going to still be in the same career? And it's not going to be because you're doing something ordinary, right? And at what point does music should always just be a hobby and a love till it becomes a business, right?
Absolutely.
You know, I had a 9-to-5 sweeping hair before I got into the business. So, you know, someone asked me to go into prison to talk to some prisoners about getting into the music business. And I'm like, yo, they're in prison, right? So let's figure out, before getting into the music business, can they get up and go even get to the course? And a couple of them they stayed in bed. Well, why am I coming in to talk to them about getting into the music industry and they can't even get to so that 9-to-5 thing of getting up in the morning and being and arriving with your shirt tucked in and ready to kind of work, not in your fucking trap star gear, and ready to work. That the 90% of success is just turning up early, not on time, early, because that gives you time to prepare. And a lot of people just miss that, going, well, what's turning up on time going to get me? A lot. A lot, but you don't understand life experiences to understand that just getting up early gives people trust in you that you're going to arrive and you're going to open up and you're going to put the heating on. So when everyone turns up, the room is warm.
Yeah.
But why should I be turning up early to make the room warm? I want to go and work in the studio. It's back to me going, I want to sign an act. So people should allow themselves the time and the ability to be great. And if you, to be good and then great. But if you can't be great, be very good. But if you can't be very good, don't be ordinary. Go and do a 9 to 5. And music is your hobby. Be ordinary with your hobby. But in the business, especially in the independent sector, you got to be proper resilient because no one's running around for you.
Absolutely not.
So I don't want people to waste their time arriving at a place that the music business is not for them. My daughter is in the music business, and I say to her, I don't even know whether you're gonna. You need to be resilient. You need to really figure it out and be really good, because I sat in rooms with really good people. The competition in other labels was off the scale. We had to make records that sold. And then I could sign George the Poet. Then I could go and make The Intent 2 with Nicky and Slim. Then I could go and brew beer, which we did. We brewed beer. The can, you could Shazam the can and it came with music. We did a festival there on OC Island. So you sell records, you can do all the other stuff. But people just want to get culture. And I remember my boss, Lucian Grange at the time, said, I'm fucking sick to tired of you fucking talking about fucking culture. Culture ain't gonna fucking pay the bills. Fucking sell some fucking records. And we were like, yo, shit. And then we went and sold records, and then we could do culture.
Yeah.
I don't know what the question was.
And that's why Universal's the biggest label in the world. You just spoke about independent music, and we're jumping around a little bit, but that's fine. Let's talk about the evolution of the independent sector. Last 7 years, I think it is, year-on-year growth within the space. It's now accounting for approximately 1/3 of the market share. And you've made a bold step away from major labels for the first time in 30 plus years. And you're going independent yourself. You've left Warner.
Yeah.
You've reunited with your old co-president, Ted Cockle, my old mate.
Yeah.
And together you've launched Darco Artist Partnerships.
Yes.
Can you share a little about what the venture's about, what your ambitions are for the company, why now is the right time to become independent?
The major record label ecosystem is broken. And it's not future proof. And the direction of travel, especially with majors not bringing new artists to the marketplace, they're just becoming big distributors, and they will acquire talent. They won't develop the talent. That's not their business. There's too much happening in emerging markets. We are slowly becoming like Belgium. We're not exporting enough. What was the question again?
The question is, why have you moved into the independent
That's
space,
exactly
and
why
what's
I
the
moved into
plan?
the independent space, because majors, the old typical deal, it's an 80-20 split. They give you 20% royalty, and they keep 80% of your shit. They own 80% of everything, right? And the distribution model takes 15% to distribute your music, but doesn't give you any hands-on, doesn't give you any services.
So there's no marketing, there's no promotion, there's nothing that
You've got to
helps
go and
you.
figure that out for yourself. And managers, as the landscape evolves, managers are now having to do more than they ever had to do in terms of the development of their artists, because the record labels can't do it. And artists take longer to develop nowadays. So for me, it was, and a lot of artists, music drives a lot of their other business. And if you're in the record business, you don't have any right to their other business, right? You would try and get little bits of it, and you'd call that the 360. So you do the record deal, and you try and get percentage of their live, percentage of their merch, percentage of branding. but a small share of it. So for me, moving forward in terms of where the where I think the industry is going, is what services can I offer in partnership with an artist and their manager, that they can keep the lion's share of their offering and bring them to market in a digitally native way. Partnership came out of it. I just don't want to be in the record dealer, just in records anymore. I was working with artists where, Rihanna makes more money off other stuff than music. Music will just soundtrack what she's doing. So if people still have find a profoundness in music. If music still soundtracks our lives, but is no longer the big slice of the pie, and because of attention economy, it's losing the big slice to the other verticals, gaming, blah blah blah. So rather than try and have a slice of it, why not just try and be the biscuit base, right? So every slice you take, I'm in that bite as well. So I think it's about partnership. I think it's about fairness and equity. If there's no there has to be transparency. There has to be disruption in what the major labels are doing, and that has to be with artists going, how can I keep hold of the major share of what I'm doing, and how can I still be successful, and how can I still go around the world, or how can I build a small community, a cottage community, or a community to scale up? And if management are doing all the work that the labels can't do, what is that sweet spot that is between the major record label and the distribution model? There's a sweet spot right up the middle.
And what does that look like for you as Darco Artist Partnerships? Because one of the things that we try to do on this podcast is really look into what the business is, what the finance is. What does that look like in terms of deal structure for you at Darco Artist Partnerships?
Deal structure. So if we have to go to long form, if it can't be on a one piece of paper, on a one pager, right, simple terms, then why are we doing the deal? I don't want to go to long form to introduce this thing that you get tied up so stuffed because no one trusts each other and everybody's predicated on failure and everyone's to pay out if this doesn't work. The lawyer said to me, what happens if this doesn't work? I said, I'll shake your hand and we'll walk away. So you have to create a scenario where people kind of go, there's no overreach here. And the ambition is the same. And the deal's very simple and it's very transparent and it's very short. And if people want to go again, let's talk about going again. It shouldn't be locked into the deal that people have to go again.
So is that like I don't know, maybe a 50-50 with the artists across all their verticals? You're looking at artists like Brent Friars, Nux, who are creating new models whereby they retain all the rights to everything that they do, and then their management team come in and take equity out of the rights that they hold, excuse me, out of the business that they hold, and then they'll go and get a distro situation. So within that entity, everybody has equity in a bit of everything that they're doing. The artist retains ownership and they can go forth. Are you operating off a similar model, or are you kind of going, well, we'll do more 50-50 partnership with the talent across the board? Like, how does it work, and put in more money? Like, how does it work for you?
I think you've got to allow for stuff to evolve and not to pin it down in a deal just because you can. You should have the latitude to keep adding an extra page into the deal because things have developed in a different way. I just want people to see, I want people to get written checks because their music is selling. That equity thing, blah, blah. People just want to be able to talk about my offering is different, all right? At the end of the day, a team of people brings something to market, and how do you value that team of people? So if you have a business like Bright Fires and I'm coming in going, I want to partner up, I've got to be able to say I can grow your business, and I'm not going to overreach on a business that you've built. Right now, I don't know if he wants to grow his business or he just wants to stay at that level, but it's a la carte. But the thing it has to be is you can't have people going, I'm stuck in something. It doesn't feel good. It's not transparent. You're taking the piss with the money. You're having my shit for life of copyright. The license is too long. It's that the world is too transparent for that stuff to happen anymore. And if people care about the revenue piece rather than the chart position, right, I think the business would be saner, because the chart position is you have to chase something. The revenue model is how do I sell to my fan? What's the offering, right? And for me, that's the mission now. Is the other stuff, the streaming and the algorithm, that should come as a direct result of the community that you've built that you can action, and you can do call to arms with your community. Otherwise, you're paying other influencers to fucking go and create content, and everyone's high-fiving because they've got a top 40 streaming record. And I'm like, this is why we're here now. This is why we're here. Because no one's figured out how to sell direct to their consumer, have a relationship with the fan from ground up. You can't do it off the back of TikTok or a data record. It's just not going to happen. And I don't mind that business. It's microwave food. But where's the stuff that's going to be looking after you in 10 years' time? What's the work you've put in that you've got a nice balanced portfolio of art versus business? All right. So at every level, people have been good. And in the independent sector, you have to be even braver. You have to be even braver. And again, everything goes in cycles. You burn everything down to start again. Sometimes you over what is it when you take too much out of the soil? You over what?
I'm not a gardener.
I'm a gardener. Not over water, but when you just turn the land barren because you've
you take
what? Whatever.
You take all the goodness out.
Overreach it. Yeah, you've taken all the goodness out of the soil. So then you've got to like take the topsoil off and then lay new soil and seed it and let the seeds root and let the seeds grow. And that's just all common sense. And if people just took a time to kind of go, how long does shit take? What is actual real quality? Right? And yeah, but I need to pay my rent. It's not my fault. Figure it out. And again, that's where people who are going to really win.
And how important is that part? Because, you signed Daneo as well, right? And something that fascinates me, I speak to him all the time. One of the things that fascinates me about his story is he's always like, I was still working in Carphone Warehouse and going and shelling the raves and then going back to work at Carphone Warehouse and then going out again that night and shelling the raves. And that's the problem with the
music business. The route into the music business, and I get all of this, but there's nothing that really straightens you up than having to go to a 9 to 5, and after when you finish that job, have to go to the studio. Like you've got to have some real, like really want to do it, if that has to be the case. And you turn up, and then you leave the studio at 3 o'clock in the morning to go home to wake up at 9 o'clock to go and do your job. You know those people are going to make it. You know they're going to make it. So if you make it easy for people, they're not going to make it. If they think it's easy, they're not going to make it. And that's why I'm kind of at a level now where it's kind of like, stop gassing people and raise the bar higher and don't be afraid of something sounding so different that it scares you, because I've heard millions of times, but it doesn't sound like what's happening at the moment, and there lies the problem. So yeah, what? What's the solution? Or solution? Oh yeah, sorry, beg your pardon. But that's, you know, people either figure out or they don't figure it out. And you can't, you can polish, you can put some glitter on shit, no problem. But people will find out that it's glittered shit at some point. Oh, glitter. Oh, it's shit. You know, so it all, you're defined by any individual. What do you get up in the morning to actually really do? And if you're really serious about it, it will happen. If you're not, it won't happen. You'll get found out. You might not have the talent. You might not have the resilience. You might not have the confidence in a place where we all got insecurities. So as I say, keep saying, yeah.
So as you enter this independent space, after 30 years in the majors, working a certain way, what are you doing to evolve your strategies with your new label and with the talent that you're working with, both the executive talent and the creative talent?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I'm going to use a football analogy, but you know when they did the takeover of Manchester United, and it was about creating a culture, a winning culture, and getting the right people in situ to create a winning culture. So it becomes about the people in the room. People sign to people. They don't sign to the company, they sign to the people. So so the offering of the people has to be amazing. And let's start there. So me and Ted took Ireland for its most successful period with the most amazing artists ever. So I'm like, I'm rolling with Ted again. And then it's about what the offering of the company is. All right, if I'm sitting here with an artist and go, right, I'm going to sign you to, I'm going to give you the DSP strategy. There's a digital person here that will give you the DSP strategy, and Spotify and Apple, and then there's the radio person that will talk about taking your record to radio, and there's a TV person that will try and get you on TV. If we're having these conversations in today's landscape, I'll shoot myself in the face and I'll go postal on everybody in the room. Because I sat in a room for the last couple of years with people that can't pull levers anymore, that have no influence on the trajectory of an artist or a record. The promotions person doesn't, the DSP person doesn't, the marketing person doesn't, the artist and the manager does. So what is that new team? What does that new org chart look like of a new music company? Because I used to have recordings in my title, Darco Recordings, and it just felt old and obsolete. And we keep talking about A&R, and I was like, everybody knows what A&R stands for, right? Artist and repertoire. We do everything now with the artist in terms of the repertoire, their brand, their live. So I was like, we're not A&R and repertoire anymore. It's artist and reputation. Then we're all A&R people, right? And we're dealing with the artist's reputation, their music, their brand, everything. And then if I sign an artist and I say, here's the marketing person, I'm just like, that's just old. So what do you replace that department with, right? And that for me is a fan engagement platform, right? Where you can figure out how you get granular with your artist to the point that you can press a button and call the fan direct, or what the color of the fan is and the number of what door number is there on their street, and you can fence them off. What do you call it? Geofence. You can geofence, so you're not spamming everybody. So the offering has to be about the fan and community engagement and growth. Then if you don't have radio and TV in the room, who do you have in the room? Then it's about brand and content, right? And it's being able to have a pipeline of the music, the delivery system into where kids eyes and ears are, which are completely different platforms, and creating a relationship with the fan where you can go direct to them and figure out what the relationship and what the sale is, and doing that without the traditional parts of the business in the room, because those 2 or 3 years now have to be spent doing that with new artists. It's not about getting them on radio. It's not about getting them on TV. It's about helping them build their community that they can sell to.
Essentially, we're talking the true fan theory. Engage 1,000 fans that are dedicated, that are community driven, build that community, and then engage appropriately and track the metrics. Are you using that data in that way, as opposed to here's a TikTok video that is doing millions and millions, and gathering that data, but instead kind of tracking the data where it's like, okay, this person has listened to my track X amount of times on Spotify, they've bought this much merch, they've bought this many tickets, therefore that's my number one fan. I'm actually going to invite them for some type of engagement to, a recording session, or, the rehearsal of my show. Is that the kind of direction of travel that you're moving in?
Yeah, 100%. Fans are at the center of it. And you've just got to make that relationship rock solid, because fans will finish you off, right? If they can move on to other stuff, and the old gears don't keep them in situ anymore. Just getting your record played doesn't keep anybody engaged. So the org chart of my new company, which I want to be completely digitally native, has to look night and day different to a major record company, because the sell is what is the two years of just building your community and being able to monetize, however small or however big. When Ben Scars brought Tinchy in, Tinchy had a t-shirt called Star in the Hood, and we were in conversation. I said to him, we had done a singles deal, and I said to him, what's that t-shirt? And he said, oh, that's my brand, Star in the Hood. And I was like, oh shit, that's a dope brand. And he was like, yeah. I said, what do you do with it? He said, I mail it out from my yard to my fans. And I was like, okay, well, how much do you charge? He said, 25 quid a pop. I was like, whoa. I said, how many do you sell a day? He said, 25. I went, can you get the lawyer back in here, please? We're gonna do a different deal. We did the record deal, and then we did an investment model deal where we invested in Star in the Hood, and we invested in his brand, and we made $1 million top line. So the understanding of the brand and monetizing that brand and helping people create an ecosystem where they can feed themselves, and not have to go and do a major record label. And if they do a major record label deal, they'll build up such a buzz that when they go and do it, they do it on their own terms. They have the leverage because they've got the community that they're selling to. They've got the data, right? So what does bravery look like in the next 5 years, 10 years for people? And why in 10 years' time is there another shift? Because major record labels are going, fuck, right, all of these people that are out there doing it, how do we buy them in? Just like they did with Island Records when Polygram bought Island and A&M and Def Jam, and you buy that shit back in. So this period of should be exciting. It should be inspirational. It's there if you're really good. The economics are there. I think people should think a lot more globally when they're making their music. And if you think globally, it means you're not making records that sound like they're sounding at the moment, because you're going to have to really think about, when my records arrive anywhere else, why are people going to be excited about it? And I just remember when UK music, I used to travel to America, and they go, yo man, your music out there is amazing, man. It's sick. I don't understand it, man, but you guys are mad. Like, it's fucking amazing. And I don't get that anymore. And now everybody in their world has got their own version of whatever it is, whether it's hip hop or girl group or blah, blah, blah. The Koreans are doing a madness. Africa's now doing a madness. And we were the great exporters of art and music. So that's all I want to kind of get back to. Because if you make great records, there's some upside in that.
How much did your time in America influence this thinking and where you are now? Because, you know, being in New York, anything can happen in New York.
Yeah.
It's the land of dreams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jay-Z sang about it. Jay-Z
Yeah.
and Alicia
It's all
Keys
real.
rapped about it.
It's all
How
real.
much did being in that environment influence your decision to actually say, you know what, I can do this without a major. I can do this and I can go independent. I can take that step, because that environment is so go-getting. Like, I was fortunate to be there as a teenager. It completely changed my work ethic, completely changed my mindset. How impressionable was that for you, even though you were the CEO whilst you was in New York?
Yeah, the drive is off the scale in America, because the bag is real, because the American dream is real. Like, there's only so far you can scale up here. In America, if you scale up in America, and then it goes around the rest of the world. So the American dream is real. You can go from zero to ultra rich really quickly. What I found working in America was that the managers are really powerful, and they are powerful to the point where you actually have to surrender power in a lot of decision makings and a lot of asks. And they're making a lot more money than I ever was. So, and they were doing a lot more exciting stuff. In a record label, you're restricted beyond the parameters of what your label allows you to do and the policy of the label. If you're entrepreneurial, these guys are in everything, doing everything, you know, and being really successful about it. And they had majors running, they were running rings round majors. You know, I would say no, and they would just go to Lucy, and then then came back and said, well, Lucy, and said yes. So, you know, I had Scooter Braun and Irvin Azoff, and you don't tell these people no. Yeah. Right. So you've got to manage that. But I came back from America just understanding the ability to scale up. And we are in a global market. They make records to travel onto radio, out of their local state and onto radio. Radio's still a big part of what they do, so the records are fucking great. And they go around the world. So America just made me realize that even in America, you know, there's Americans fighting to be successful, and everyone's going to sit in here going, I'm going to break America. No, you're not. Even Americans that are doing good can't break America. So America should be the last place in your head. But if you want your records to compete on an international streaming site, it better be as good as the shit that's coming from Korea or America or Jamaica or Africa, and it's got to be different. So people have got to figure out that for themselves about what am I trying to say when I say that, and again, just listen to the records that did travel. You know, when Craig came along with Artful Dodger Rewind, he went around the world with Walking Away. Is it Walking Away in 7 days and Walking Away?
Yeah.
But he had to get on the club floor with Rewind. You know, a lot of our records used to come out of club culture, and now they don't. And now everything's Afrobeat, but I'm Caribbean. So yeah, I think there's some figuring out. It's an exciting place to be if people want to be experimental, and try different things, and build their own communities
And influencing your business.
and influencing your own business.
I just want to, because we're coming to the end. We've
I
got
can see
a couple
people
more.
tiring.
Got a couple more questions, but I want to touch on your ADHD diagnosis, and I'd love to explore how that came about. So, you know, much later in your life, what led to the diagnosis, and how's that impacted you both on a personal level and on a professional level, and has it changed the way you approach your work and life in general?
100%. Firstly, I got diagnosed because my son got diagnosed, and he was on some madness, and I was like, dude, this, and I didn't realize that I was him, or he was me. you just get older and you just kind of go, why are you behaving like that? I was never like that. I fucking was worse. So, no, seriously, I did some mad shit when I was younger, you know, ingesting drugs and getting arrested and nearly dying. And it's just the mad things that I just thought that I was either badly behaved or wired just completely different. And then, so when I got into the music business, it was a bit of a superpower because I could hyper focus and I could just go.
Yeah.
You know, someone said, I want you to go to LA, do a meeting and come back the same day. I did that. So you just go hard and resilient. And there, for the grace of God, go I, that music was my backdrop. And there was enough stuff happening. Every day was different that I never got bored. But as much as ADHD was good for me being impulsive and making decisions and quick decisions, it was also a bit of kryptonite because I would manage things through the lens of ADHD. Especially when I became a leader, I would expect too much of people because I could have 20 tabs open and I could make 10 records at the same time from all different genres and just go into different rooms. And I hated people that just couldn't keep the same energy, including my own kids and my wife. So when you get diagnosed, you realize that you're not thick, and you carry that imposter syndrome along with you right through your life. And no matter how successful I was, I would always just go, what's next? I would never kind of look in the rearview mirror, never get gassed about it. I was just on to the next. And because the ADHD would never give you time to sit in situ and just smell the fucking roses or the ganja or, well, I know I use ganja a lot to slow shit down. I was self-medicated, but ADHD enabled most people that are in the creative, you're autistic, ADHD, there's something of a disconnect. And I've 18 months ago I found out, and I'm literally starting to become a different person by knowing that I take medication and allow my executive function to take. And because if you're with ADHD, and for what comes along with that, there's a lot of masking that goes along, and there's a lot of imposter syndrome, and it can make you ill, right? And especially if you're super successful and you're doing what the 1% are doing, it's not sustainable. And ADHD, it's not a funny thing. It's not, oh, you got ADHD. It's not. It's quite deep. And but it enabled me to be super, 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 super successful, but at a cost, right? And that's why I wrote the book as well, because success comes at a cost. Whether it's the manager, whether it's the artist, whether it's the executive, it all comes at a cost.
What's the cost of your success?
The cost is mental health, and being happy. You know, I used to have a Bentley when I came back from America. I bought a fucking Bentley, and when I got diagnosed, I knew I'd bought the Bentley, and so I got rid of it and got an electric bike. So you know, it's understanding those things earlier. I'm 1%. I made it. I'm 1%. There's 99% that doesn't make it. So it's understanding that we're wired differently. Diagnosis, therapy is where I'm at the moment, because success and huge success just means that you get stuck in this thing that you've just got to keep delivering. And most people, and you see it all the time, everybody has mental health break, right? And now more people are talking about it. People will cancel tours. People will talk about it now. But the book is very much as well, you know, be careful what you wish for. Everybody wants to be a leader, but not everybody can lead. Everybody can be successful in a moment, but can you repeat it? And in doing all of that, I can deal with my mental health because I've got money to deal with my mental health. And the more money you make is the more expensive treatment you can get, right? But all you're doing is keeping shit at bay. So there comes a point where you have to go, it's not sustainable, and success is not everything, and be careful, money is not everything. And that's why that middle is so important, because people have got to kind of get off this all or nothing and go, what's my business? And if my business scales up like it did with Tinchy, it doesn't matter if it didn't. He would just go back to mailing out those T-shirts, 25 quid a pop. And he's back there, independent, making dough. So the ADHD, whether it's ADHD or whether it's autism or whether it's personality disorder, whatever it is, we are all giving up something to kind of be creative. And if you understand that, then that gets managed. I can understand why Angel never used to finish records. I can understand why a certain executive is always late. And there's some people that you have to give a little bit of margin and leeway because of that. And when I used to, people used to go, why do you back certain artists more? And I said, and this was a black or white thing, and I said, because young black boys and young black girls aren't used to being backed, right, in the record deals. So my responsibility sometimes was just to keep people in the deal, because to be out of the deal, I knew what would happen. But white people didn't have to engage in that. I had to engage in that because I was a black guy that came with a certain set of responsibilities and beliefs that I gave Ray Black 20 grand. And I said, no strings attached, you come back to me. And people go, why did you do that? And I said, you've got to back. I'm a black man. And I've got to be able to wake up in the morning and be all right with myself. And so that's what I mean. Some people get up in the morning to run a business just to have hits. And that is the first port of call. After that, what do you want your offering to be? Why will people come and not want to leave? Why do people get backed and you're sitting there with them 15 years later in a career? And we've all gone on journeys. I can't do this 15-second TikTok thing. Well, I can if it's a big hit. But yeah, I think there's certain individuals that create change. There's not a handful of people. It's not loads of people. There's a handful of people, just like Richard Russell at Excel, Jeff Travis at Rough Trade, or NQ up in Manchester. There's going to be certain cats that by hook or by crook, doesn't care what happens, they're going to do something. So the future can be exciting, but people need to be excited by it and inspired by it, and stop making records that aren't inspiring.
I'm going to end with one last question. And it's a question that we try to put into the podcast all the time. Your whole career has been filled with moments where you've had to push through adversity, you've had to evolve, and in the spirit of the be unstoppable mindset, what's been the driving force that's kept you looking forward? Even in the toughest moments, how have you got over those moments? And as you look ahead, what does being unstoppable mean for you now?
I've probably done enough bits and pieces to kind of just come back to a very simple answer that, and this happened yesterday. I had a meeting. Do you know Rose Gabor?
Yes.
She played me her demos. I was just like, I called her up. I got home and I called her up an hour later, and I said, I've just been listening to these demos, and I don't want to get bent out of shape, but I'm just like, it's like different. And then she's like, oh, thank you. Put the phone down. And about another hour, I listened to it again. I go, what's happened? Are you going to write a middle eight for the other song? Because it just feels a bit, I was just engaged. And that's all you can be. But I've been around amazing people, amazing executives, amazing records. So I know the levels. Is someone saying wrap it up? But so I know, so I just want people to be around and understand what greatness is. And we can't all be great, but we can be really good. And that so it's simple. It just comes back down to a moment where you listen to something and kind of go, I don't know what the fuck this is, but I'm in. I'm blinded by just being in. That's all all I've got is my taste. Who's seen the Rick Rubin thing where Addison Cooper's asking Rick Rubin what he does in the studio, and he says, "Can you produce? Do you know how to use a desk?"
He can't do anything, he has taste.
He has taste and his confidence.
Yeah,
that's all. Okay, have you got taste and have you got confidence? I mean, if you haven't got confidence, how are you winging it? Right. So it just comes down to the simple thing of taste and confidence.
Great stuff, Darcus. Thank you so much. I could talk to you for like another hour. I know we can't because I'll get kicked out. But I could do a whole nother hour. There's so many more questions that I want to ask. But I'm
just glad that we're sitting here after however many years when we first met. And half of the mission is just staying in the room.
Yeah.
Right. And we're here having this grown up conversation. When we first met, I wasn't so grown up, and you were even younger.
I was even younger. Blonde hair, piercings,
weirdo.
Tattoos.
It was weird.
Different. Different
you. He was this weird black man. That's just his his alternative. No, thank you, Ben. I appreciate it.
It's all good. It's all good. Can we get a round of applause for Darcus, please? And I'd just like to thank everybody for being here for the first episode of the podcast. Please sign up to our mailing list. Join us on socials. Be Unstoppable Pod _. And remember, you have the power to choose your path in life, but always choose to be unstoppable.